Nike store refuses entry to Michael Jordan. Staff's reaction when they found out. The fluorescent lights of the Nike flagship store hummed overhead as Marcus Chen massaged his temples, trying to ward off the headache that had been building since noon. The store's closing time was approaching, and the October rain drummed against the windows, creating a monotonous rhythm that matched his mood. "Daddy, when are you coming home?" His 8-year-old daughter's voice from their earlier phone conversation still echoed in his mind. "Soon, baby. Just need to finish work first." "But I'm sick, and Mommy says—" "I know, Lily. I know." The memory of having to cut the call short made his chest tight. Sarah, the new hire he was supposed to be training, approached his security post near the staff entrance. Her enthusiasm somehow hadn't diminished despite it being her third straight day of retail training. "Hey Marcus, quick question about the closing procedures." "Not now, Sarah." He cut her off, then immediately regretted his sharp tone. "Sorry. It's just been a long day." She nodded, understanding written across her young face. "Your daughter still got that fever?" 103.2 this morning. He checked his phone for the 100th time. No new messages from his wife Lisa. That was probably worse than an angry text. The store's evening crowd had thinned to just a handful of customers. Through the front windows, Marcus could see people hurrying past, collars turned up against the rain. A typical Tuesday evening in Chicago was winding down, the kind of night where nothing usually happened. "Marcus," Kevin from the shoe department jogged over, clutching a clipboard. "We've got a situation with a customer up front. Says they got the wrong size in their online order." Marcus glanced at his watch. 8:40 p.m., 20 minutes until closing. "That's not really security's problem, Kev." "Yeah, but they're getting pretty heated. You know how you've got that way of calming people down?" Sighing, Marcus keyed his radio. "Jerry, can you watch the staff entrance for a few minutes? Got to handle something up front." "Copy that," crackled the response from his fellow security guard. The customer situation took longer than expected. A mix-up between European and U.S. sizes had resulted in a pair of limited edition sneakers being 2 sizes too small, and the customer, a collector, judging by his detailed knowledge of Nike releases, wasn't taking it well. "Sir, I understand your frustration," Marcus said for what felt like the 10th time. "But as I explained, we can process a return and expedite a new order." "Do you know how long I waited for these?" The man thrust the shoebox toward Marcus's face. "These are the Air Jordan 11 Cool Gray Retros. They sold out in 4 minutes online." Marcus knew exactly what they were. He'd tried to get a pair himself when they dropped. "I understand, sir, but we're closing in 15 minutes, and—" "This is ridiculous. I want to speak to whoever's in charge." It took another 10 minutes to get the situation under control, with Marcus finally convincing the customer to return the shoes and placing a priority order for the correct size. By the time he made it back to his post, his headache had evolved into a full-blown migraine. Jerry gave him a knowing look as they switched positions again. "Fun times?" "You could say that." Marcus rolled his shoulders, trying to work out the tension. "How's it been here?" "Quiet. Just Emma heading out for her break." Jerry gestured toward the employee entrance where the young cashier was putting on her rain jacket. Marcus nodded to Emma as she pushed through the door, the sound of rain growing momentarily louder before it closed behind her. He checked his phone again. 8:52 p.m. 8 minutes until they started the closing procedures. Sarah appeared again, this time with a cup of water and some aspirin. "Thought you might need these." The simple gesture of kindness almost made his eyes water. "Thanks, Sarah. Sorry about earlier. First week going okay otherwise?" She brightened at the question. "It's amazing. I mean, I know it's just retail, but it's Nike, you know? My brother nearly died when I told him I'd be working here. He's a huge sneakerhead." Marcus smiled despite himself. He remembered that feeling 3 years ago when he'd first got the job. The pride in wearing the swoosh, working for the brand that had defined his childhood watching basketball with his dad. You'll get used to it, he said, but not unkindly. Just wait until holiday season hits. A crack of thunder made them both jump. The rain was coming down harder now, drumming against the metal service door. God, poor Emma out there in this, Sarah said, peering through the small security window. Should we call her back in? Marcus was about to respond when his phone buzzed. Lisa's face appeared on the screen. His stomach dropped. I need to take this, he said, stepping slightly away from Sarah. Hello? Marcus, her fever's getting worse. Lisa's voice was tight with worry and something else? Anger? Disappointment? After 12 years of marriage, sometimes he still couldn't tell. What did the doctor say? The doctor said what doctors always say when you call after hours, go to the ER if it gets worse. Otherwise, wait until morning. But she's asking for you. Marcus closed his eyes. Lisa, I'm sorry. We're closing in a few minutes. I'll be home as soon as. You're always about to be home soon. Do you know what Lily said to me today? She said maybe if she wasn't sick so much, you'd want to be home more. The words hit him like a physical blow. That's not fair. No? When was the last time you made it home for dinner? When was the last time? The sound of the service door opening made Marcus turn. Probably Emma returning from her break early because of the rain. But instead, he saw a tall figure in a black hoodie trying to slip inside. I have to go, he said into the phone. Something. Of course you do, Lisa cut him off. Of course. The line went dead. Marcus shoved the phone in his pocket, his personal problems taking a back seat to protocol. The figure was already halfway through the door. Sir, you can't come in this way, Marcus called out, moving to block the entrance. Rain whipped in through the open door, speckling the floor. This is a staff entrance only. The man paused. He was tall, very tall, and despite the expensive-looking jacket he wore, he was soaked from the rain. The hood obscured most of his face, but Marcus could see him frown. Look, I just need to grab something quick, the man said, his deep voice carrying a note of authority that Marcus had learned to be wary of. I know the store manager. Behind Marcus, he heard Sarah inhale sharply, but he kept his attention on the man trying to enter. I'm sorry, sir, but that's against store policy. The main entrance is right around the corner. We're about to close, but you can still. You don't understand, the man cut in. I'm not just any customer. I know Tom Martinez. It was always the same with these types. Drop a manager's name, act like they're too important for rules. On any other night, Marcus might have been more diplomatic. But with his daughter sick at home, his wife angry, and his head pounding, he'd had enough. Sir, I don't care if you know the CEO of Nike himself. This entrance is for employees only. Now, you can either use the main entrance like everyone else, or you can come back tomorrow when we open at 10 a.m. The man's shoulders tensed. For a moment, the only sound was rain and distant thunder. Then he reached up and pulled back his hood. Sarah's gasp was loud in the sudden silence. The clipboard she was holding clattered to the floor. Marcus felt his stomach drop as he found himself staring into the face of Michael Jordan himself. The man whose posters covered the store's walls, whose shoes filled their shelves, whose very name was synonymous with Nike itself. And Marcus had just told him he didn't care who he was. Oh my God, Sarah whispered, loud enough for both men to hear. That's Michael Jordan. Time seemed to freeze. Marcus felt his mouth go dry as his brain frantically tried to process what was happening. Here was Michael Jordan. The Michael Jordan, standing in front of him, rain dripping from his expensive jacket onto the floor. Marcus had watched the cleaning crew mop just hours earlier. The security radio at his hip crackled to life. Marcus, we're starting closing procedures up front, Jerry's voice announced, seemingly from a different universe. Everything okay back there? Marcus couldn't find his voice. His hand moved automatically to the radio, but no words came out. Jordan's eyes narrowed slightly, studying Marcus's face. First day on the job? He asked, his voice carrying that same commanding tone Marcus had heard in countless interviews and commercials. No, sir, Marcus managed to say. 3 years, actually. 3 years, Jordan repeated, wiping rain from his face. So you know Tom Martinez? Yes, sir. I mean, of course, sir. He's the store manager. Then you know I come here sometimes. Through this door. Jordan gestured at the entrance Marcus was still partially blocking. A small puddle was forming where he stood. Sarah had inched closer, her phone clutched in her trembling hand. Marcus could see her fighting the urge to take a picture. Behind her, Emma had returned from her break, standing frozen with her mouth open, coffee cup forgotten in her hand. Marcus swallowed hard. His security training was battling with his survival instinct. I know who you are, Mr. Jordan, but the protocol for this door… Protocol? Jordan interrupted, and something in his tone made Marcus's spine straighten automatically. Kid, do you see that? He pointed to the massive poster hanging on the wall behind them, Jordan himself, suspended in his famous Jumpman pose. Yes, sir? And those? He nodded toward the display of Air Jordans near the entrance. Yes, sir? This whole store, hell, half of Nike, exists because of our partnership. And you're telling me about protocol? Marcus felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air flowing in from outside. 3 more employees had gathered in the corridor now, whispering among themselves. He could hear phones being pulled out, camera apps opening. No photos, he said automatically, then wanted to kick himself. Here he was, about to lose his job anyway, and he was still enforcing store policy. But to his surprise, Jordan turned to the gathering crowd. You heard the man, he said sharply. Put the phones away. The phones disappeared instantly. Jordan turned back to Marcus, and for a moment Marcus thought he saw something like approval flicker across the basketball legend's face. What's your name? Jordan asked. Marcus Chen, sir. Well, Marcus Chen, you've got quite a decision to make here. Because either you're about to be the guy who let Michael Jordan stand in the rain, or you're about to break your precious protocol. Thunder rumbled overhead, as if emphasizing the moment. Marcus thought about his daughter at home with her fever, about Lisa probably sitting by Lily's bed, disappointed in him again. About his father, who'd raised him on stories of Jordan's legendary determination and integrity. Marcus took a deep breath. Mr. Jordan, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. I grew up watching you play. You're the reason I wanted to work at Nike. My dad and we never missed a game when I was a kid. But this door, it's for employees only. The main entrance is just around the corner. I'd be happy to escort you. You're really going to do this? Jordan cut him off, his expression unreadable. Marcus felt his career crumbling before his eyes, but he stood his ground. Yes, sir, I am. Marcus's hands wouldn't stop shaking. He tried to hide it by clasping them behind his back, but the tremors worked their way up his arms. The rain outside had intensified, and each thunderclap made the gathered employees. Did you just? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Did you just tell Michael Jordan he can't come in? Jordan hadn't moved from his spot. Water dripped steadily from his jacket onto the floor, creating a small puddle around his expensive leather shoe. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, those famous, intense eyes that had stared down the greatest players in basketball history, were fixed on Marcus. Tom, Jordan said suddenly, pulling out his phone. I'm calling Tom. Marcus felt his stomach twist. Tom Martinez had been a good manager to him over the years. Just last month, he'd arranged the schedule so Marcus could attend Lily's school play. Now he was about to get a very different kind of call about his security guard. Mr. Jordan, please. Sarah stepped forward, her customer service smile plastered on her face. I'm sure we can. Sarah, Marcus cut her off quietly. It's okay. Jordan raised the phone to his ear, never breaking eye contact with Marcus. The gathered crowd of employees held their breath. Even the usual closing time announcements over the store's speakers seemed muted, as if the building itself was waiting to see what would happen. Tom? Yeah, it's MJ. I'm at your store. A pause. No, actually, I'm standing outside your store, in the rain. Another pause. Because your security guard won't let me in the staff entrance. Marcus could hear his heartbeat in his ears. His phone buzzed in his pocket, Probably Lisa wondering why he wasn't home yet, but he didn't dare move to check. No, no. Jordan continued into the phone, his voice taking on an interesting tone. Don't do that. I want to handle this myself. He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. The silence that followed was deafening. You know what's interesting? Jordan finally spoke, his voice carrying that same authority that had commanded courts and boardrooms. In 30 years, do you know how many people have told me no in a Nike store? Nobody answered. Marcus felt sweat rolling down his back despite the cool air flowing in from outside. 0. Jordan answered his own question. Not one person. I've walked into Nike stores all over the world. Every single time, people fall over themselves to help me. To bend the rules, to make exceptions. He took a step closer to Marcus. Even at 48, Michael Jordan's presence was overwhelming. Marcus had to fight the urge to step back. So tell me, Marcus Chen, why are you different? The question hung in the air. Behind them, Emma dropped her coffee cup. The sound of it hitting the floor made everyone jump, but nobody moved to clean it up. Marcus's throat was dry. He thought about every possible answer, about his job, about rules, about security protocols. But when he opened his mouth, what came out was the truth. Because my father taught me something, Mr. Jordan, he said, his voice shaky but gaining strength. He taught me by watching you, actually. Game 5 of the '97 finals, the flu game. Jordan's eyebrow raised slightly. You were sick, terrible fever. Everyone said you shouldn't play, but you did. You scored 38 points. Dad told me it wasn't just about basketball. It was about doing what's right, even when it's hard, even when everyone expects you to do something else. A small smile played at the corner of Jordan's mouth. So you're comparing enforcing a door policy to playing through the flu in the NBA final? No, sir, Marcus replied. I'm saying you taught a lot of kids like me about integrity, about standing your ground when you believe in something, even if it's just a door policy. Someone in the crowd of employees let out a low whistle. Jordan's expression shifted, just slightly, but Marcus couldn't. Do you know what I hate more than losing? Jordan asked suddenly. Marcus, like every basketball fan in Chicago, knew this quote. Being second, he answered automatically. Being second, Jordan confirmed. You know why? Because second place means you had the ability to be first, but you compromised. You let something stop you from giving everything you had. He gestured at the door Marcus was still guarding. Right now, you're not compromising. Even though it would be easier. Even though everyone in this room thinks you're crazy. Even though you're probably terrified of losing your job. Marcus nodded slowly. Yes, sir. Your daughter's sick, isn't she? The question caught Marcus off guard. How did you? I heard you on the phone earlier, before all this started. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Yes, sir, she has a fever. My wife's with her, but you're still here, doing your job. Yes, sir. Jordan looked at him for a long moment, then did something unexpected. He laughed. Not a warm, friendly laugh, but a sharp, challenging one that cut through the tension like a knife. You know what? This is exactly why I like this store. You're doing your job, son, but trust me, tomorrow's going to be interesting. He pulled his hood back up, adjusted his jacket, and turned toward the main entrance. The crowd of employees parted like the Red Sea. Mr. Jordan, Marcus called out, surprising himself. The basketball legend paused. I really am sorry about the rain. Jordan turned back, that famous competitive gleam in his eye. No, you're not, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. As Jordan walked away, Marcus felt his legs start to give out. Sarah quickly pushed a chair behind him, and he sank into it gratefully. Marcus, Emma whispered, still staring at the door Jordan had disappeared through. What did you just do? I think, he said, pulling out his phone to finally check Lisa's messages, I just ended my career. The next hour was a blur. Word spread through the store like wildfire. Employees who hadn't witnessed the incident firsthand came rushing to hear the story. Phones buzzed with text messages and social media notifications as people tried to process what they'd just seen. You have to admit, Kevin from the shoe department said, helping Marcus clean up Emma's spilled coffee. It took some serious balls to do that. Balls? It was stupid, another employee chimed in. No offense, Marcus, but you don't tell Michael Jordan he can't use a door, in any Nike store. But did you see how he reacted? Sarah countered, still bouncing with excitement. He respected it. He actually respected it. Marcus barely heard. He was staring at his phone, at the series of increasingly worried messages from Lisa. Lily's fever is up to 104. Where are you? Marcus, please call me back. The doctor says we should go to the ER. I have to go, he announced, standing up suddenly. Sarah, can you handle the closing procedures? I showed you yesterday. Of course. She nodded quickly. Go. Your daughter needs you. As Marcus gathered his things from his locker, his hands were still shaking. But now it wasn't from the confrontation with Jordan. It was from the realization that he'd let his job keep him from his family again, even if he still had that job tomorrow. Hey, Marcus, Jerry called out as he headed for the door. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Both time. Marcus paused. Both time? Standing up to Jordan and leaving now for your kid, Jerry smiled. Some things are more important than any job, even if it means saying no to the GOAT himself. Marcus nodded, throat tight, and pushed through the door into the rain. As he ran to his car, he could see the main entrance of the store, the proper entrance, where just minutes ago, Michael Jordan had walked in like any other customer. His phone buzzed again, Lisa letting him know they were heading to the emergency room. As he started his car, Marcus realized something strange. He wasn't worried about his job anymore. Whatever happened tomorrow would happen. Right now, his daughter needed him. But as he pulled out of the parking lot, he couldn't help but wonder what Jordan had meant by tomorrow's going to be interesting. Something in the way he'd said it made Marcus think this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The rain followed him all the way to the hospital, and somewhere in the back of his mind, he remembered reading that Jordan had once said he loved playing in Chicago because even the rain there had attitude. Marcus was beginning to understand exactly what he meant. The emergency room was crowded when he arrived, fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across worried faces. He spotted Lisa immediately, pacing near the registration desk with Lily bundled in her arms. Daddy! Lily's voice was weak, but her face lit up when she saw him. Lisa's expression was harder to read, relief mixed with lingering anger as he approached. Finally decided to join us? Lisa, I'm sorry. Something happened at work. Something always happens at work, Marcus. She shifted Lily's weight in her arms. But right now, your daughter needs you more than Nike does. Lily reached out for him, and he took her from Lisa, feeling the heat radiating from her small body. Hey, princess, how are you feeling? Hot, she mumbled into his shoulder, and the room keeps spinning. A nurse called their name before he could respond. As they followed her through the double doors, Lisa touched his arm. You're soaking wet, she said, noticing his rain-drenched uniform for the first time. What happened? Marcus adjusted Lily in his arms, thinking about how to explain the night's events. I had to stand my ground on something at work. It might cost me my job. Lisa stopped walking. What? I'll explain later. Right now, let's focus on Lily. The next few hours were a blur of doctors, tests, and worried waiting. Lily's fever eventually responded to medication, and by 3 a.m., they were cleared to take her home with prescriptions and strict instructions for monitoring her condition. As Marcus carried their sleeping daughter to the car, Lisa finally asked, So, are you going to tell me what happened? He secured Lily in her car seat and closed the door softly before turning to his wife. The rain had finally stopped, leaving behind a heavy humidity that made the hospital parking lot shimmer under the streetlights. I refused to let Michael Jordan use the employee entrance. Lisa stared at him. You what? He tried to come in through the staff door. I told him he had to use the main entrance like everyone else. Michael Jordan, The Michael Jordan. Yeah. The man whose shoes our daughter begged for last Christmas? The reason you wanted to work at Nike in the first place? Marcus leaned against the car, suddenly exhausted. That's the one. Lisa was quiet for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she started laughing. Not just a chuckle, but full-blown, doubled-over laughter that echoed across the parking lot. Lisa, shh. You'll wake Lily. I'm sorry, she gasped, trying to control herself. It's just, of course you did. Of course you would be the one person in Chicago to tell Michael Jordan he can't use a door. You're not mad? She wiped tears from her eyes, her laughter subsiding. Oh, I'm still mad you didn't come home sooner, but… She looked at him with something like pride. You wouldn't be the man I married if you didn't stand up for what you think is right, even if it's something as silly as a door policy. Jordan said tomorrow's going to be interesting. What does that mean? Marcus shook his head. I don't know, but I'm more worried about Lily right now. Lisa reached out and took his hand, squeezing it gently. She's going to be fine. The antibiotics will help, and whatever happens at work tomorrow, we'll figure it out together. As they drove home through the quiet streets of Chicago, Lily sleeping peacefully in the back seat, Marcus's phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. OMG Marcus. The video is everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. Nike's security guard is trending. He showed the message to Lisa at a red light. Well, she said, a hint of amusement in her voice. I guess tomorrow really is going to be interesting. Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror at his sleeping daughter, then at his Nike uniform, still damp from the rain. He thought about Jordan's laugh, about the way he'd said tomorrow's going to be interesting, about how sometimes doing the right thing meant standing your ground, even when it seemed crazy to everyone else. Whatever tomorrow brought, at least he'd have a good story to tell Lily when she was older, about the night her dad said no to Michael Jordan, and lived to tell about it. For now, though, he just wanted to get his family home and get some sleep. Tomorrow would come soon enough, and something told him he was going to need all his energy to face it. Marcus sat in his car in the Nike store parking lot, gripping the steering wheel. He'd barely slept. Lily's fever had spiked again around 5 a.m., and he'd spent the early morning hours helping Lisa keep her comfortable. But here he was, an hour early for his shift, watching the sunrise paint Chicago's skyline in shades of orange and pink. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing since last night. The video had indeed gone viral. Someone in the crowd had managed to capture the whole thing despite Jordan's warning about phones. The comments were divided. This security guard is either the bravest or the dumbest man in Chicago. Imagine telling MJ he can't use a door in a Nike store. Actually respect this guy for doing his job integrity. Rip to this man's career. A knock on his car window made him jump. It was Sarah, carrying 2 cups of coffee. You're here early, she said as he stepped out of the car. Couldn't sleep anyway. He accepted the coffee gratefully. How bad was it after I left? Sarah leaned against his car, blowing on her own coffee. Well, after you left, Jordan actually came back through the main entrance, bought a pair of shoes, asked Kevin about the new releases. You're kidding. Nope, he was different, almost friendly. Asked about you, actually. Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. What did he say? He wanted to know how long you'd worked here, if you were always like that. She grinned. I told him about the time you caught those guys trying to steal the limited edition Dunks. How you chased them down 3 blocks. Sarah. What? It's true. You've always been serious about doing the right thing. She pulled out her phone. Have you seen the memes yet? The what? She showed him her screen. Someone had taken a screenshot of the security footage and added text. When you take, just do it too literally. Another showed his face photoshopped onto famous scenes of people standing their ground. The tank man from Tiananmen Square, Gandalf facing the Balrog. "This is insane," Marcus muttered. "Marcus." They both turned. Tom Martinez was standing at the staff entrance, his face unreadable. "My office. Now." Sarah squeezed his arm as he walked past. "Good luck." The store was quiet this early, just a few employees setting up for the day. Every single one of them stopped to stare as Marcus followed Tom to his office. He could hear them whispering. "That's him. Did you see the video? I heard Jordan's lawyers." Tom's office was small but well organized, with signed basketballs and rare sneakers displayed on shelves. He closed the door behind them and sat heavily in his chair. "Marcus," he began, rubbing his temples, "do you have any idea what kind of morning I've had?" "Sir, Nike Corporate has been calling since 5 a.m. ESPN wants a statement. The Chicago Tribune is running a story. And Michael Jordan's team." He trailed off, shaking his head. Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Mr. Martinez, I was just following protocol. The employee entrance has been part of Michael Jordan's contract with Nike for 20 years. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "What?" Tom pulled out a thick folder and opened it on his desk. When Jordan signed his lifetime deal with Nike, one of the stipulations was that he would have unrestricted access to any Nike store in Chicago, including employee entrances. Marcus sank into a chair. "I didn't. Nobody ever told me." "Because it's not something we advertise. It's buried in legal documents that most store managers don't even know about." Tom leaned back, studying Marcus's face. But here's the interesting part. Jordan's team wasn't calling to complain. Marcus looked up sharply. "They weren't?" "No. They were calling to commend your professionalism." The office seemed to spin slightly. "I'm sorry. What?" Tom smiled for the first time. Apparently, Mr. Jordan was quite impressed. Said it reminded him of why he chose Nike in the first place. "Because we don't cut corners." "But I was wrong. About the door." "Yes and no. You were wrong about Jordan's access rights, but you were right to stand your ground. Do you know how many people would have immediately backed down, made an exception, compromised their principles just because of who he is?" Marcus thought about his father's words, about integrity and doing the right thing. "So, I'm not fired?" Tom laughed. "Fired? Marcus, you've accidentally created the best PR Nike's had in months. Nike integrity is true. People are sharing stories about times Nike employees went above and beyond to do the right thing. Corporate is talking about turning this into a campaign." "You're joking." "I'm not. But there's something else you need to know." Tom's expression turned serious. "That side entrance? It was actually part of Jordan's original contract with Nike. He has special access rights we never told the security team about, an oversight that's gone unnoticed for years." Marcus processed this information slowly. "So I was wrong." "Technically, yes. But your response to being wrong, standing your ground, maintaining professionalism, putting principle over celebrity, that's what impressed everyone, including Jordan." A knock at the office door interrupted them. Sarah poked her head in, looking nervous. "Sorry to interrupt, but, Marcus, you need to see this." She held up her phone. On the screen was a new tweet from the official Jordan brand account, a simple black and white photo of the store's employee entrance, with the caption, "Integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one is watching, except when everyone is. Nike integrity." "There's more," Sarah said, scrolling. "Nike just released a statement. They're updating their store policies nationwide, making them clearer, more transparent. They're calling it the Chen Protocol." Marcus felt lightheaded. "The what?" "Congratulations," Tom said, standing and extending his hand. "You just changed how Nike handles security procedures across the country, and all because you wouldn't let Michael Jordan use a door." Marcus shook his hand automatically, still trying to process everything. "My daughter. She's sick. I need to check on her." "Go home," Tom said immediately. "Take the day. Be with your family." "But Marcus?" He waited until Marcus met his eyes. Tomorrow, we need to talk about your new position. New position? Nike Corporate thinks we need someone to oversee the implementation of these new security protocols. Someone who understands the importance of integrity over celebrity. Someone who's not afraid to stand their ground. Marcus walked out of Tom's office in a daze. Sarah followed him, practically bouncing with excitement. This is amazing. You're going to be famous. Well, more famous than you already are. Did you see how many followers you have now? Someone made a fan account for. Sarah, Marcus cut her off gently. I need to call my wife. She nodded, understanding. Go, be with your family. But Marcus? She grinned. Thanks for making my first week at Nike the most interesting one ever. As Marcus headed for his car, his phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. Lily's fever broke. She's asking about you. Also, did you know you're on Good Morning America right now? Get home soon, Mr. Famous Security Guard. Your daughter wants to hear the story directly from her superhero dad. Marcus smiled, looking back at the store, at that famous employee entrance that had somehow changed everything. Sometimes, he realized, doing the right thing meant standing your ground. Even if you turned out to be wrong, maybe especially then. And somewhere in Chicago, he was pretty sure Michael Jordan was laughing about it all. The drive home was surreal. His phone kept buzzing with notifications, journalists trying to reach him, friends sharing news stories, more social media mentions than he could count. At a red light, he checked one of the news articles Sarah had sent him. Nike security guard stands ground against Michael Jordan, a lesson in integrity. The article had quotes from business ethics professors, sports commentators, and even former Nike executives. One paragraph caught his eye. In an age where celebrity often trumps principle, this incident reminds us what integrity really means, said Dr. Sarah Martinez, no relation to the store manager. It's not about being right. It's about doing what you believe is right, even in the face of overwhelming pressure to do otherwise. His phone rang, the store's number. Marcus? It was Kevin from the shoe department. Man, you're not going to believe this. Remember that angry customer from yesterday? The one with the wrong size Jordans? Yeah? He just called to apologize. Said he saw the video and felt bad about how he acted. Asked if he could write a letter to corporate about how professionally we handled the situation. Marcus laughed. You're kidding. Nope. Oh, and Marcus? The retro Jordans he wanted? A special delivery just arrived. Size 13, just like he needed. The box has a note on it, courtesy of MJ. The light turned green, and Marcus pulled forward, shaking his head in amazement. The Chicago streets were busy with morning traffic, but everything felt different somehow. The same buildings, the same roads he'd driven for years, but now... His phone buzzed again. Another text from Lisa. Just got a call from Lily's school. Apparently they want you to come speak to the kids about integrity when she's feeling better. The principal saw the video. Then another message popped up, this one from his father. Son, just saw the news. Your mother's crying. I've never been more proud. You remember all those Jordan games we watched? All those talks about doing the right thing? You were listening. You were really listening. Marcus had to pull over, his vision blurring with tears. He thought about all the times he'd felt stuck in his job, wondering if he'd ever do anything meaningful. Never imagining that simply standing his ground, quite literally, would resonate with so many people. His phone rang again. Unknown number. Hello? Mr. Chen? A professional-sounding woman's voice. This is Patricia Williams from Nike Corporate Communications. I apologize for calling your personal number, but we have a rather unusual request. Mr. Jordan would like to know if you're free for breakfast tomorrow morning. Marcus's heart stopped. What? He specifically said, and I quote, "Tell him to use the front door of the restaurant." She paused. I believe that was his attempt at humor. My daughter's been sick. I need to. He said to bring her too, if she's feeling up to it. And your wife, of course. He mentioned something about having experience playing through fever. Marcus thought about Lily's face when she talked about her Jordan sneakers, about Lisa's laughter in the hospital parking lot, about his father's message. "What time?" he asked. "We'll send a car at 8 a.m. And Mr. Chen, off the record, what you did, it's already changing things around here, in a good way." After hanging up, Marcus sat in his car for a long moment, watching the city wake up around him. His phone kept buzzing, but for now, he just needed to breathe. He thought about that moment in Tom's office, learning about Jordan's contract, how being wrong about the rules hadn't made him wrong about the principle. How sometimes the biggest moments in life come disguised as small choices, like standing in front of a door in the rain. Finally, he started the car again. His daughter was waiting. His wife was waiting. And tomorrow he'd have breakfast with Michael Jordan. But first, he had a story to tell his family. A story about a door, a rainy night, and how sometimes doing the right thing means standing your ground, even when you're standing in front of the greatest basketball player of all time. As he pulled into his driveway, he saw Lily's face in the window, brightening at the sight of his car. Lisa opened the door, holding a newspaper with his picture on it, shaking her head with that mix of exasperation and pride he'd fallen in love with 12 years ago. "So," she called out as he walked up the path, "ready to tell us what really happened last night?" Marcus smiled. "You might want to sit down for this one." Behind him, the morning sun broke through the clouds, casting his shadow long across the lawn. Somewhere in that shadow, he could still see the security guard he'd been yesterday, the one who'd stood his ground in front of a door. But now that shadow stretched further, reaching towards something new, something unexpected. And yes, somewhere in Chicago, Michael Jordan was probably still laughing about it all. But now, finally, Marcus felt like he could laugh too. The restaurant was empty except for the staff when Marcus arrived with his family. Lily, still a bit pale but feeling much better, clutched her father's hand while taking in the elegant surroundings. Lisa walked beside them, looking both amused and nervous. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered to Marcus as they were led to a private dining room. "I mean, it's actually him, right? This isn't some elaborate prank?" Before Marcus could answer, they turned a corner and there he was, Michael Jordan, dressed casually in a black sweater and slacks, standing near a window overlooking the Chicago skyline. Lily's grip on Marcus's hand tightened. "Daddy," she whispered loudly, "that's the man from my shoes." Jordan turned at the sound of her voice, and his face broke into a genuine smile. "You must be Lily," he said, walking over. "I heard you weren't feeling well." Lily, suddenly shy, pressed against Marcus's leg. "I had a fever." "You know, I played one of my most famous games with a fever," Jordan said, kneeling down to her level. "Sometimes being sick makes us stronger." As they changed direction toward the store, Marcus thought about what Jordan had said about moments that test us, about choosing between what's easy and what's right. His phone buzzed again, a message from his father. "Your mother's already framed the newspaper article. When are you coming for dinner? Bringing my granddaughter and her new shoes?" Marcus smiled, typing back a quick reply. Then he looked up at the Chicago skyline, at the city he'd grown up in, the city where Michael Jordan had become a legend, the city where a simple security guard had stood his ground in front of a door and somehow changed things. "Dad?" Lily called back. "Race you to the corner?" "Oh no," Lisa laughed. "Don't you dare. You're still recovering." But Marcus was already running, catching up to his daughter, their matching Jordans hitting the pavement in sync. Because sometimes, he realized, the best way to honor a moment of standing your ground is to know when it's okay to just run free. Behind them, Lisa shook her head and smiled, taking a video of her family racing down the street, the security guard who said no to Michael Jordan, and the little girl whose fever had kept him at work that fateful night, running together in the Chicago sunshine, their Nike shoes flashing with each step, And somewhere in the city, in a private office with 6 NBA championship rings on display, Michael Jordan was probably looking at the same staff-only sign photo on his phone, thinking about integrity, about standing your ground, about how sometimes the biggest legends start with the smallest stands. Because in the end, it wasn't just about a door or a policy or even about Michael Jordan himself. It was about a man who chose to stand his ground, a family that stood with him, and a principle that stood the test. And that was worth more than any backdoor access in the world.